Welcome back, everyone, to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Today we have a guest from Seeds Ethics, and we're going to let you introduce yourself. Take it away.
My name is Lisa Stark Hughes, and I am an officer with Seeds and also the education chair. So what that means is that we actually host a monthly brown bag at lunchtime. We host 2 conferences a year, and then we also create online content for professionals so that they can learn about how to run an ethical agency.
Oh my gosh.
Love
Okay,
it.
I have so many questions now. Okay, what is a brown bag?
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically just a webinar, kind of like this, but with a lot of people. And we do it kind of at lunchtime. I mean, we have people all over the country, so lunchtime is kind of a loose time. It's 11 a.m. We do it on the 3rd Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific. So
Oh, how cool.
And I think I was kind of like perusing your website and just kind of looking at some stuff. And you have to be a member to be able to go to the brown bags, right?
that's correct. It's one of the benefits of being a member. There occasionally we will collaborate with like the ABA or Quad A or another organization for a topic that kind of works together, and then we'll invite their members as well. They'll invite us to those. But basically, yeah, it's a benefit of being a member.
Yeah. Okay, that's lovely.
Okay, so Seeds was founded in 2012 to define the highest ethical standards in the art industry. Can you share the who and why behind its inception?
Sure. So if you think way back then to 2012, surrogacy was definitely happening. It was in full swing, but there were starting to be more like scandals and different, ethical hiccups. And agencies at that time saw each other more as competitors. Like there wasn't as much collaboration as there is now. And so Wendy Wilson Miller and Lisa Chia, who both own agencies in Southern California, got together and said, you know what, we should really create, this organization, gather in some other professionals, and create some ethical standards for this industry. Unlike attorneys or IVF clinics or mental health professionals, there isn't a licensing structure that actually kind of governs agencies. And so it's basically was created to kind of fill that gap. But instead of politicians creating, arbitrary rules that people have like lobbied for and against, and people that don't really understand this field trying to make rules, it's basically members and other professionals, because there are a lot of licensed professionals in this field. IVF doctors, of course, OBGYNs, all the medical doctors. I'll just kind of group them together. Legal professionals, mental health professionals, a lot, not all, but a lot of escrow companies are licensed depending on the state. So it kind of brings everybody together to really work on what are the correct processes. And there isn't really any barriers to entry in being an agency. So if you're an intended parent that either had a good or a bad journey, or a surrogate that either had a good or a bad journey, like you can just start your own agency. And they might be starting that agency with just their experience. In fact, typically they're starting it with just their own experience, and they only know the processes for their own experience. And every single state regulates surrogacy differently or doesn't regulate it at all. And so even if it's not regulated in your state, this helps provide a structure and processes to help protect everyone. So not only, the intended parents, but the surrogates, any children that come from this process, the other professionals as well.
So I'll just ask the question. Is Seeds really just for surrogacy and surrogacy agencies, or are there other types of businesses that you guys regulate for, or that you come up with guidelines for?
So members of Seeds, let me just say what SEED stands for. SEED stands for Society for Ethics in Egg Donation and Surrogacy. So we have egg donor agencies, surrogacy agencies, we have attorneys, we have mental health professionals, we have IVF clinics and doctors. And then we kind of have this other category for, escrow companies and doula services. And, there's like other kind of augmenting professionals
Right.
that deal with, somehow this process, passport expediters, but they actually understand about surrogacy. So it's kind of wide.
Yeah.
The standards right now as they stand are actually standards for surrogacy and egg donation agencies.
Okay.
But we will be expanding into the other fields as well, mostly because the standards that are set in their fields are general for example, let's just take attorneys, right? So their ethical standards are for all attorneys regarding whether it doesn't matter if you are practicing litigation law or corporate law or any family law, specific things that just apply outside, they're just specific to this industry. It'll be kind of best practices.
Okay.
Right.
So same with mental health professionals and things like that. Their licensing
Right.
is general for their whole field, for every
Right.
professional, regardless of what they actually do within that license structure.
You guys are going to come up with more specifics for this type of egg donation and surrogacy for
Right,
that
like
type
best
of-
practices. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
So
Very interesting.
when it comes to, because you're saying that you guys set like guidelines, right? But it's not mandatory that agencies follow these guidelines. But if they were to, are they considered partnered or like have like a stamp of like we're seed ethic like material?
So our members are all supposed to follow our standards. Like that's an agreement that you make by becoming a member.
Okay.
People can follow the same standards and choose to not be a member. Like that's fine. So it isn't like Seeds goes out there and says, okay, even though they're not a member, they're like Seeds quality. Do you know what I mean? But
Okay.
you should know that and we have our directory on the website, but if they are a member, they should be following all of those standards. You can also download the standards so that, anyone can download the standards and read through them and look so that they know as surrogates, egg donors, intended parents, whoever you are in this process, you should know the things that your agency should be doing and what that process should look like.
That's
So
very helpful.
it's very helpful. So because surrogacy was just passed in New York. So New York has all these, something that I learned, they have like a Bill of Rights for surrogates. So is this kind of the version for the other states of like, these are the rights of each party in a sense?
No, most
can
laws
tell.
are not structured with a Bill of Rights. New York is the only one that
Right.
has chosen to structure theirs that way.
Okay.
There are other states that have surrogacy regulations. New York just decided to, do theirs a little bit differently than other
Places.
other states.
Yeah.
When it goes through the political process, right? Everybody gets to throw in their opinions, and depending on what they think is good is what's going to happen in that state. So, the things in the New York Bill of Rights for surrogates is really just kind of like, as a surrogate, you should know, like, these are things that
Can happen.
aren't questioned. Do you know what I mean? Like you should know that you have these rights. These are things that, there were professionals in the field that helped with that, with these laws. So not that people think that the New York law is perfect, but I'm not sure that the law is perfect anywhere. One thing that's interesting is that every single state regulates, well, if they regulate surrogacy, they regulate it based off of, like, they have a different starting point. So for example, Utah's surrogacy regulations are based on family law. So they started with like, here's our rules for adoptions. And then they like formed it like, and let's make that work for surrogacy. But in California, the law is based on contract law. So they kind of all have different starting places.
Yeah.
Depending on what was politically, I think, going to work in that state or what it came from. Because whenever the way that surrogacy grows anywhere, whether it be in the United States or in another country, basically what happens is surrogacy kind of starts in this gray area, right? Based on like, we're going to pull from this law, we're going to pull from this law, we're going to pull from this. Based on these things, we can make this work. And then as the demand grows, then the politicians come in to regulate, right? And sometimes in between the two, there are scandals and hiccups and, you know, those types of issues, because that's what brings it quite often to the politicians' attention. Politicians typically are not proactive.
Right.
They're typically, you know, they make laws reactive. So when you see a really funny law, like you can't throw a live moose out of, you know, an airplane, which is actually a law in Alaska, you can wonder, okay, what in the world happened to like that something made that a law? So laws are reactive typically, not always, but typically reactive. And so that's why you'll see other countries where surrogacy will start, they get really busy, but then they don't know how to work out certain aspects, and they're missing the logistical, like, how can we make this work? And it gets bogged down in the political process. So usually at that point, they just shut it down in the country because it's easier than trying to work out the logistics.
Wow. So I guess, who's the regulating parties, or who are the individuals? Well, back it up just a little bit. I know we have these different professional groups, the medical healthcare professionals and medical professionals, and OBGYNs and all of those. So if a ethic or a guideline needs to be hashed out, and hey, we're going to create this and we're going to bring this as part of seeds, who's doing it? Is it the individuals in that specific professional field, or is it someone representing all of the professional fields kind of coming in?
So we have a standards committee,
okay,
right, which has a variety of different fields, you know, professionals in that group. And so it depends on what area or what professionals, you know, they're working on creating. There'll still be somebody from all of the different areas, but they'll have more from that field. So they can get a variety of different opinions. But, you know, as you can imagine, there's always attorneys on there because, you know, we're writing standards. There'll be agencies on there just because that's where it kind of logistically meets, you know, those processes. All of the standards are voted on by all of the members, and the standards are sent out to other organizations as well. So, for example, before, you know, they were sent out for feedback, right, to ASRM and to Quad A and, you know, different organizations. I don't want there to be conflict necessarily. So that's it. It's a lot of people, but it starts with the committee. We have a committee that works on that, and then it'll go out for feedback to the members. It goes out to feedback to other organizations, comes back, they make adjustments, gets, you know, eventually gets sent out for a vote, and then either, you know, they're approved, not approved, and it's individual standards.
I want to piggyback on that one just for a second. I did surrogacy like 21 years ago. They threw like 4 eggs in and 3 took, and I ended up having triplets, and we had to deal with a reduction. It was like, oh my God, what is happening? So now best practices is to really 1 embryo. So from 21 years ago till now, and Anya, know this happened years ago, not just now, but that would be something, is that something that you guys tackled? Is that something that came from Seeds Ethics, or was it already in place prior to?
No, that actually came from research done by some of the IVF doctors. Like there's some that as a part of their practice do research, right, and do the statistics. And so it kind of came from a variety of different studies and then became kind of best practices. But a lot of what changed in that 21 years was that a difference in technology. So it used to be how they froze. Well, back then it was only embryos. They did not freeze eggs, but the freezing technology has changed and it's better now. So, you know, you used to lose a lot of, you know, embryos just from the thawing process, and they couldn't survive it. And so that kind of impacted the number that they would be transferring, right? Also, when they grade the embryos, like there's more information now, like they're better at that, being able to tell what's possibly going to take and what's not going to take. We have PGT testing now, which we didn't have back then. Like there've just been a lot of technological and science advancements that have kind of got us here.
Okay.
But one thing too that we have seen, and we haven't tackled this at Seeds at all, but just for your listeners to keep in mind, every embryo is not the same. It's really hard for surrogates, since they've always had an easy time getting pregnant, to think that there's any chance that whatever embryo you put in is absolutely going to take. So there is a part where they do need to listen to the doctor, because there are bad quality embryos. Like there just are. And they can say, you know what, it's not going to survive if we freeze it. Like it's not even that strong. And so you'll probably never see a standard that says only transfer one embryo, because they have to allow for the doctors to be able to do their job. It's just not that simple.
Right.
You know, they might transfer 2 really low quality embryos as long as the surrogate and the parents are both okay with the possibility of twins. But everyone knows going in, really the most likely scenario will be that it'll be a failed transfer. Do you know what I mean? Like that neither one will take.
Yeah.
They're really just kind of hoping that one might take. So that happens. But I also understand that, you know, I mean, I've been a surrogate twice myself, so I understand that you think like, it's all about you, and that whatever, you know, somebody looks at you and you're going to get pregnant and it's going to be simple for surrogacy, and it just isn't necessarily always that simple. So we do need to make allowances for the doctors to be able to actually do their jobs and listen. Now, if you hear some doctors saying we should put in 4, if that's different, totally different. I'm talking about, you know, sometimes there is a call, you know, where it does make sense to transfer 2 embryos, you know, and it might be there, you know, like one flag to let you know, like they're only 3-day embryos. Okay. That alone lets you know they're not that good.
Right.
And the chances of them taking are low. So it's important to not get kind of too focused. Like it has to be like this. Surrogacy just isn't quite that simple. It'd be nice if it was, but there really is very few things that it's just like, this is always the answer. But, you know, there are definitely some best practices and things that should always be done. You should, you know, both sides should have attorneys, like always, you know, there are things like that absolutely should always happen. Your insurance should always be reviewed by a professional. Always happen.
Always.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry that off tangent there. Go ahead.
So how does being a member work then? Like, what does that mean to be a member? Like, can I just be a member just because I want to be, or like, is it strictly
There's
like
a fee base, right? Right, Lisa, there's fees.
There are fees. Yeah, it's an annual fee. There's an interview process in order to be accepted. You have to like the first thing is you go on and you apply and you answer like, I don't even know how many pages because it scrolls, but you know, answer all these questions about your business and what kind of professional you are and things like that. It is a professional organization. So it isn't something where just a random person who wanted to join could join. Now I think that like, if you wanted to join, since you're a content creator, I don't know, maybe.
Oh, I was just giving an example.
I know,
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not sure how they would categorize that. Because we do have like an other category, but it's usually things like doula, you know, doula services or
Midwives
service or things like that kind of still provide services. You know, like if you do injections, and so an agency can call you if they have an intended parent or a surrogate that needs the injections done for her, or, you know, like your husband's going out of town and I really don't feel like I can do this myself. They can call and have this, you know, have a nurse come and give you your shot. Those types of things, kind of resources.
Okay.
So content creator, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say no, but I'm not on the membership committee. So
I'm going to go with possibly not, but but okay, so now the committees, how are those made up? If I'm not mistaken, they're volunteers, yes?
everybody's a volunteer.
Yes.
So the board's a volunteer, the president, officers, all the committees. There's one paid part-time admin.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
And we couldn't live without her.
Love it.
But you know, that's it, is one paid part-time admin to kind of help us out, you know, sending emails to members and, you know, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
So then how does somebody volunteer to help seed ethics?
So they would, depends. If they know what committee they want to join, then they would actually just email that chair, the chair of that committee, and say, hey, I'd like to join your committee. And then they would go through, like, here's the commitment of our, you know, like, here's how often we meet, because they're all different. So
Yes.
like the education committee, we meet twice a month, but then there's also the third meeting, which is the brown bag.
Brown
So
bag.
we actually meet like
Right.
3 times a month. But
Wow.
there are other committees that might meet less often. There are other committees that meet every single week. So it kind of just depends on if you really have that much time. Like, you know,
Right.
it might
Right.
be a greater time commitment than what someone's looking for, but really it's just a matter of saying, you know, hey, I'm happy to help. Can I join? And, you know, and then talk about the commitment. And if you're willing to commit, then it's, you know, the more the merrier, because it just makes less, you know, less work, because we're all doing this for free. All
Yeah.
of it.
Wow. I'm really a little shocked to hear that it's not like a for-profit, because you're really providing such a valuable and necessary service. That's
Yeah,
interesting
nope,
to
it's
me.
totally volunteer.
Wow.
Yeah.
More power to you. That's great.
Oh,
Seed trust.
okay. So do you guys
Trust.
get
Yeah.
mixed up with Seeds escrow?
So it's Seed Trust. It's
Okay,
not
right.
Seeds, you know,
It's
so
their seeds with an S.
Right.
yeah, but sometimes, but not typically,
Okay.
because really their name is Seed Trust, and
Yeah.
this is Seeds Ethics.
Yeah.
So close, but not quite.
Yeah.
But
Okay. I was just curious because it's interesting that you guys have similar names and you guys aren't run by the same people.
okay, so Adam Winder, who is the
Oh,
president of Seed Trust, is
yes.
also the current president of Seeds
Seeds.
at the moment. But that, you
Okay.
know, that's something that kind of changes every few
Sure.
years. So,
Okay. Just so
you
happens.
know, that
That's
could,
fun. Okay.
but at the moment,
Got it.
there is a little, you know,
Overlap. Okay.
yeah, overlap.
Oh, how funny. That's funny. Okay then. Um, so if people to become a member, you said they have to go through all these questions and things. So there is a chance that people can be denied of
Yes.
becoming a member.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can you give us an example? And you don't have to give us names, nothing. An example
Yeah.
of what might deny someone.
So I am not on the membership committee, so I
Okay.
can just give you like a theoretical example.
Okay.
But like right now, there are agencies like in Canada that want to join Seeds, and right now our membership requirements don't allow for that.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Is
it
it
might
just-
in the future, but at the moment, that's
Is
you have
it
to be
US based?
it's
Lisa?
US based. Yeah.
It's US based. Okay.
Right
Okay.
now it's US based.
Okay.
If somebody sends their as a part of like their agency, they send their surrogates to another country for transfer, or if they for example, there's surrogates, there's one agency actually that has Mexican surrogates that live there, and then they bring them up to Southern California for the last trimester, and then have them deliver in California. Like that, they can't be a member.
Right. Okay. Understood.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
That makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so you have 2 conferences each year, May and November. Are these only open to members or can anyone anyone attend?
And the community attend.
Yeah, so we open it up to members first.
Okay.
And then after a certain date, then it gets opened up to non-members. So non-members can attend. We always have one in Southern California. This year it's in Anaheim, but usually it's kind of around that area. And then we have one that's someplace not California. So we had one in Nashville, we had one in Florida, and then the next one actually after Anaheim is going to be in Denver in Colorado.
Okay.
Okay, super cool.
And so at a conference,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go into long drawn out, just what occurs at a conference? What's happening there?
So it's mostly panels and, which is just like we do our brown bags. So it's like several days of brown bags. So on a brown bag, we would have like a panel with a topic and then they would talk and then you question. So like we just had one today this is the brown bag, not a conference, but the brown bag, we were talking about medical liens. And different ways to tackle medical liens. And, there's like 13 states that have them and, ways to fight. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Negotiate down the lien, just those types of things. And last month, ours was on, if intended parents, especially this happens more with international intended parents, but if escrow is not funded enough to pay all the medical bills and they aren't funding escrow anymore and they've gone home with their baby, like how can you because remember the medical bills are in the surrogate's name, right? So how can you shift that to make it so that the intended parents are responsible for those medical bills? Like that was last month. But like at our conference coming up in November, we have someone that's actually presenting their doctoral thesis, which was about the impact of hedge fund companies in this space. We have reframing gamete and embryo donations, how agencies and allied professionals create best practices in the modern world. So that's a lot that has to do with like donor conceived people and some of their concerns. We quite often have someone from the Donor Conceived Council come and speak. There's one about employee benefits, right? To help intended parents get fertility benefits through their employers. Because a lot of times the people will come to agencies, but they're not actually sure, like, I know my company has this, but I don't know how to actually like use it. And so agencies and attorneys and professionals can be educated on like, here's how you do it. And we can actually have a contact person directly there. So we say, okay, I have an intended parent and we have a contact, for example, at Carrot or, whoever the company is that's handling those benefits. And then we can just go right to them and kind of make that process a little more seamless. A popular one that comes up quite often is nightmare scenarios because, you can always learn from those. So we'll do those sometimes. Let's see. We have this is actually a part 2 from our last one, which is like practical applications of the standards. We have one on microaggressions. And what to know when it's known. So open and known egg donation. So like different things that agencies need to do, in their paperwork so that the correct paperwork gets to attorneys. Because a lot of what we're seeing is intended parents and egg donors will say like, we're open to being known to each other, but then somehow the legal paperwork still gets drafted as anonymous. And so trying to kind of bridge that gap so that the wishes of the parties are actually what ends up being in the agreement. So, and then we have another one, managing the costs of surrogacy. I mean, there's usually almost always one about what can we do about the cost, because there's a conflict between like making sure everybody is fully protected, which usually means putting in steps that cost more money, right? And then, but how can you try and keep, prices down as much as possible, or what resources are there for parents? I mean, there's a lot of like,
we interviewed men having babies and sometimes they give out
grants.
Grants to people.
There's actually a lot of organizations that give out grants, and a lot of them can't find people to give money to. So like there is one right now in Georgia. They have $100,000 grant and they can't find anybody to give it to.
Oh my gosh.
$100,000. So basically it would like pay for your journey. And
so do you on that panel then or maybe just not that, but do you try and hook those people up? Like, do you try and steer people that way?
So what we do at Seeds is we like, hey, here's a resource for your parents. Here's the requirements, right? So if you have parents that meet these requirements, like, hey, send them that direction. For example, that one, I think you have to live in Georgia to qualify for that one.
Probably.
So
Okay.
But there's another one that's just for egg banking or egg donation or something. And I want to say it's like $50,000. But you have to live in that area of like,
Yeah.
there's a group of states. There's
Okay.
Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, I think Florida. Anyway, like over in that area, you just have to live there and
Yeah.
qualify. And they haven't found anybody to give theirs to either. So
Oh,
yeah, there's a lot of resources. Like I know
Yeah.
agencies really kind of can get a bad name on social media sometimes, but really there are a lot of resources and you can actually save a lot of money just by using an agency. A lot of people don't think of it that way. They think of, it's an extra expense that I can kind of bypass.
right.
But it actually, a lot of times, if you have a good agency, there's a
Yeah.
lot of resources that you're tapping into with
Yes.
when you contact that agency.
So, and now, okay, now kind of going back just that way, like I can fully understand. So if I wanted to work with an agency that followed your guidelines, that'll be listed somewhere on your
Yeah,
website?
there's a membership directory.
Okay,
So you can just go and look. There's even boxes you can like, depending on the kind of professional that you're looking for. So you could like click agency and then,
Filter it out.
look from, it'll filter out all of the attorneys and the mental health professionals to kind of narrow down that list.
Oh.
Because we have over, I think it's 200 something agencies that are members. So it's a list, but
Yeah.
at least they'll kind of weed out some of the,
Yeah.
the other professions.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
I didn't think that there's that many out there. I know that there are, but a lot of them you don't hear of that often.
Well,
Way
and
more
that's true. A lot of them are small, some are big, so
Yeah.
just do your research.
Yeah.
My favorite tip, honestly, because a lot of people go to like social media to look for their, agency and look at reviews. Honestly, I would say talk to professionals. And I don't mean the IVF clinics. So IVF
Okay.
clinics will give a list,
Mm.
but the IVF clinics, they're not really working with the agencies that much, right? Like
Right.
it's just, yes, they just kind of are in the process.
Mhm.
So talk to attorneys. They're the ones that know
Mhm.
which agencies have issues, which ones, the matches tend to fall apart, which ones, hey, you can count on this agency. If something goes sideways, they're never going to leave you stranded, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Definitely would talk to people that are, professionals like that
Okay.
are work more directly with the agency when issues arise.
No, that's
Very
a
helpful. Thank you.
very helpful tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Because typically you would just go out on social media.
That's how I've always found mine. I just word of mouth, like what do you guys like? You know what I mean? Like it's more of like a friend thing, but it is probably wiser at
Better to
times.
get it from a professional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because if you think about it, so there are agencies that have been around for a long time, but there's not a lot of talk about them. Why is there not a lot of talk? That means there's not a lot of problems, right?
Yep.
And people don't necessarily because there are agencies that don't. So, okay, there are agencies that will basically kind of pay their surrogates to leave them reviews. And then there are other ones that are like, no,
Yeah.
if you want to leave a review, fine, like whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily like a warning sign if you haven't, like if you don't see reviews, like you can always ask people, like ask on social media, hey, has anyone worked with them? But some of the social media groups are not super friendly.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so there are some people that just choose to not participate in in those groups.
Yes.
Right.
And if you have an agency that's really like good and supportive, you might not feel like you need that,
Yeah.
and so more research, do more research. That's it.
That's got to be the
Just more
number one
research.
word that it's over and over and over again. We talk to so many people, and even us, we're like, research, 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 do it.
Yes,
Just don't go
exactly.
Google it and pick the first agency. It's ridiculous. But yeah.
Just means they paid the most to get that.
Yep, to get to the top.
Yeah.
So so then when it comes to your guys' guidelines and things like that, are they updated when necessary? Like how do changes get made? I know that you said like obviously it goes through the standards committee, but like is it a reaction?
So basically, typically it's a member that would propose a change, right? And reach out and say, hey, you know, and then it kind of depends on if it's a new standard or if it's just adjusting a current standard, right?
Okay.
So if it's adjusting a current standard, then like the standards committee will probably talk about, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. For example, before COVID, like the standard was that you do in-person psych evals, right?
Right.
Okay, well, that no longer worked
Mm-mm.
with COVID. Like
Right.
that, nobody would have had a psych eval done ever. So that needed to change. And it wasn't actually a member that made that change. It was just kind of like, okay, this needs to be like an acknowledgement of this has changed for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then it kind of adjusted because in order to do the standardized tests,
Yeah.
right, in an appropriate way, then you have to make sure you're giving it in a certain way, with the appropriate platforms and things like that.
Right.
So, it kind of was adjusted that way. But typically there's not a pandemic to
Right.
kind of force that change. And so it's just someone brings it up and sometimes they'll just send it out for member feedback, right? Like, hey, someone has proposed this change. Sometimes it'll be kind of like, except this happens more with brand new standards. But if someone proposes a standard, then it kind of like getting a you get people to sign your petition kind of a thing, except it's for your standard. So they see that there's some support there, and then they can kind of work on those, changes and then putting it out for a vote.
Okay.
Wow.
And does it need a unanimous vote once it gets put out there, or is it majority rules?
Majority rules, but there needs to be like we had a couple that like only passed by like 65%. And at that point, they did not automatically pass. What we did is we had them brought up at a conference. So there was a big forum that everyone could talk about it. So they could kind of see what the issues were. Because sometimes the issue is just like, there's this one word that changes the meaning from this to this. And so if we can change that word to this, then everybody agrees. But most of the standards passed like almost like in the high 90s-ish. And that's what they're looking for, is the majority of people to approve it. If it's only like just barely majority, then it just comes back for discussion saying, okay, what needs to let's look at this and see what needs to happen. So there's a lot of discussion. It's not a very quick process.
Yes.
That's good.
Which creates more time for you guys. Yeah. More things.
I know, more things for you guys.
So have you been with Seeds since their inception, or did you come on a little later?
No, I came on later. I want to say 2015, 16-ish, something like that. Like it's been long before the pandemic. Yeah. It wasn't right there beginning.
How did you hear about them? Did you know somebody who was already a member? Are you familiar?
Okay. So this happens a lot in this field where something new starts and everybody says, okay, I'm just going to watch and see how that plays out.
Sure.
So that was kind of what we did first, was like, okay, let's see. And then they had a conference. And so we went to the conference to kind of check them out and, and see. And then I said, okay, I believe in this. I'm happy to help. Let me know where you need me. And then they didn't actually call me, or like, it took a while before they really were accepting help. Not really that meant it, like they meant to accept help, but whenever you're getting an organization up off the ground, creating that structure and kind of knowing where people can help can be tricky. And so it wasn't until probably like 2015-ish. I mean, I'd have to go back and look. Like I've been around for a while.
So when you say you've been around for a while, you said you were a 2-time surrogate, right? Are you with an agency? Do you own an agency?
I own it. Yeah, I own an agency.
There we go. Okay. Because you said we, and I'm like, I think she's owning something here. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I mean, every member is a professional somehow, right?
Yeah.
So I was a surrogate twice. I became a surrogate to pay for law school. Like that was my, that was my intention.
I did it to become a nurse. So
what's that?
I did one of them to become a nurse. So there you go.
So I did my first one. I carried twins. I carried full term. I delivered vaginally. Like, don't use me as the example like that.
That's a fair point, but
normal, but it happens.
It does happen. And like, good for you. I'm happy for you, because that's the dream, right? We want, if we're
Right.
going to carry
Positivity.
multiples, we want to do it how we want to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I started working for another agency. That agency actually had all of their employees as independent contractors. So I had to have, something on the side. And the way that we made sure there wasn't a conflict is the agency I worked for only worked with domestic intended parents, so only American citizens.
Okay.
They did not want to work with international. This was before, international was really kind of a thing,
Yeah.
or at least not a very big thing.
Right.
So they did not work with any international parents. So I only worked with international intended parents.
Got it.
And so then when that agency was put up for sale, all of the employees then kind of focused on their own, agencies. And that was right around when China was talking about changing their one-child policy. So kind of
Right.
the international market grew really fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we were one of the agencies that had already kind of had our program set up
Right.
Yeah.
for international intended parents,
Right.
and which kind of there's an allowance for their culture with still having them follow the like our standards here,
Okay.
but understanding kind of the cultural differences and some different things that they need. Like international intended parents cannot understand American health insurance. Like that's just
I don't blame
like
them.
Americans can barely understand it. So
Right.
it's really foreign for international parents.
Ah.
So just things like that, being able to understand having those things in place instead of just going like, here are the steps. Like, and there are agencies that are like that, and that works really well for them.
Yeah.
But we have always kind of, it's an individual journey. Like, what is it you're looking for, and trying to create a journey that is what everybody wants.
Yes. Agreed.
So if you don't want to, you don't have to, but by all means, you can name your agency.
Oh.
Plug. Yeah.
Yeah. So GS Moms. So I'm an owner of GS Moms. Yeah, we have surrogates in every state except for New York and Michigan, Louisiana. And anyway, if you have a good surrogacy state, then, we take surrogates there. We don't, we have not decided if New York licensing process is worth it. We're kind of hoping that they'll get a little more streamlined and not be such a pain, and maybe then we'll apply. But at this point, we're still kind of like watching to see if that, what we want to do.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I'm also the owner of Host Moms Uganda. So I worked with the Ugandan government on their surrogacy regulations. And so we're working on a program there as well. So there's an affordable option for parents that have all the same protections that they have here in the US.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to elaborate on that. Uganda, intended parents from Uganda or surrogates in Uganda? Both?
Surrogates in Uganda.
There we go. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. So, because I'm sure you guys know, right? Like the costs just keep going up in America,
Crazy.
and a lot of people are getting priced out of the market. So they're going out of the country anyway.
Yep.
But remember when I was telling you that the way that it works is that like the demand for surrogacy goes up, and then the regulations come down.
Yes.
So Uganda actually was being proactive. There they have what's called a women's minister, which means each district, the women elect a politician basically who's female that represents women's issues in parliament. And so there was a women's minister who happened to be the Speaker of Parliament in 2020 that was looking into surrogacy for herself. That when she was looking at, because it's been legal there for in 2020 it had been 15 years, so I guess it's like 18 now. And so when she started looking at it, she goes like, okay, what are the protections for these surrogates? Like, we need to put regulations in place. And so they started doing a bunch of research. Anyway, to make a long story short, they contacted me and asked if I would help them, and I said yes.
Awesome.
So it's basically all of the best practices, but codified into law there.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's incredible.
So,
seriously incredible. And it would help so many people on both ends. Like
that's the hope, is that there can be an affordable but ethical option for people.
Absolutely. Gosh, that's great.
Is there anything that we didn't ask that we should be asking? I mean, seed ethics is still
a wealth of
information for me.
Yeah.
One plug that I would say is that, anybody can go and download the standards. And
Okay.
so no matter what agency you use, I would definitely say whether you're a surrogate, an egg donor, or intended parent, go and download those standards, look through them, read them, because even if they're not a member, like that still is the best practice so that you know what those steps are. You know, it's to protect everybody. So for example, you know, for your insurance, right? Like your insurance should be reviewed. In California, it's nice. It's the law. Like it has to be reviewed by a professional, but it's not the law in other states where it has to be reviewed.
Right.
And it's different everywhere. So be cautious getting information just on social media because things change and things are different everywhere. So even if someone says like, I just delivered, that does not mean that any of that information is still, you know, applies right now.
Right.
It's constantly changing, which is why as seeds, we are always educating, right? Because things are always changing. Medical liens are not new, but guess what? Things have changed. And so it's knowing what's coming. Like we already know, okay, for, you know, next year, what are we expecting for ACA, you know, policies? Like we're staying up on that before they're released. And we get, you know, notifications and things like that. So it's important. A surrogate, if there's a medical lien, a surrogate should never be handling that by herself, like not ever.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, and I've seen that on Facebook a lot where they're like, oh, there's a lien and they're trying to handle it themselves because it's a medical bill in their name. And so they think that that's what they should do. Bring in professionals, please.
Right.
A lot of times intended parents and surrogates don't want to give out other agency names to somebody else. So for example, but I would say go ahead. I mean, for example, if you as a surrogate, if you get, you know, you get a lien letter on your medical, you know, and your agency doesn't know how to handle it, it's okay to let another agency know, hey, this is who it is, because then we can help them. Like we're not doing it to bash other people, but we definitely want to make sure that they know that how to handle that in the future, and we can connect you with resources. Like there are lots of agencies out there that will help you if you get stuck in a situation, even if you weren't their agency, just because they want to help. Like they don't really want people to be stuck. So don't think that, okay, I'm stuck, I want you to help me, but I'm not going to tell you anybody else, because what we're trying to do is help those people in the future so nobody else ends up in that situation again.
Right. That is a big thing that I have noticed, that agencies, you had said in the beginning, that agencies used to be like more of a competition, and now they collaborate together and they send surrogates to each other. Like, well, they're not going to work for here, but because our IVF clinic needs a little different, so let's send them over here. So it doesn't, I'm so happy to see it. I'm so happy to see it.
Yeah, and you don't get to see a lot of it on the Facebook groups because of the rules, right? The rules are, they're like, you can't plug an agency, but there are agencies that will plug another agency. Like they'll say, and they'll get slammed for doing that. But yeah, because even if they're not plugging themselves, they'll be like, don't, you know, anyway, we can get in trouble and kicked out of groups. But you'll see that sometimes we're like, oh, you know what? I think that this agency would be a good fit for you. And agencies know each other. So if an agency is saying, hey, I think this would be another good agency, that's another professional to listen to, because we hear a lot of stuff and we work with a lot of people, and, you know.
This is kind of like an out of the box question, right? But you had talked about nightmare situations. You guys talk about them, right? So what happens if you're with an agency that is the complete opposite of ethics? And now I know that they don't have to follow any guidelines, but is there a way to make that known in hopes that they can learn? Like, can a surrogate or an intended parent be like, okay, they did none of these things. I feel this type of way. Can somebody just maybe inform them of like a better way to do things?
So if they're a Seeds member, we actually have a grievance committee. So you can actually go and fill out an anonymous form like online and say kind of what happened. And then we'll make sure that they get that education. You can also get resources to get help for your situation. So that's one way. If they're not a member of Seeds, then I would let like your attorney know, or somebody, like let another professional know, because then we can try to help them. And, you know,
Okay.
it doesn't mean that every agency is going to like be happy to get help. Some,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, are fully committed to how they're doing whatever it is that they're doing. So like
Right.
there's not a guarantee. But
Right.
a lot of times it's just because they didn't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think most agencies, and this could be idealistic, but I think most agencies like are doing this because they want to help people. So, you know,
Yes.
it's,
Yeah.
they're usually happy to, you know,
Learn.
yeah,
Take the
to
feedback.
learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Learn and grow. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was just curious.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we have a grievance committee just for that. So people can come and say like, hey, this is what happened. You know, and
Okay.
sometimes like this is an old example, so we don't really hear this anymore, but you know, if you were doing it 20 years ago, you'll remember. Remember when escrow mailed checks like in the
Yes.
mail?
That's
Okay.
how I got paid.
Yeah.
Checks.
So
Uh-huh.
I got
one
paid.
of the complaints I used to hear all the time back then is it's the first and I did not receive my check in the mail today, right? And my
Yes.
contract says it is due today.
Right.
Okay, well, in a contract,
Yeah.
what due today, like due on the first,
Yeah.
means is that it's supposed to be cut that day. Like, and typically it would have been cut a few days before, and they mailed it because we kind of like would try to walk this line between
Yeah.
like, want you to get your check on the first, but we can't cut it too soon because what happens if you miscarry or you know something in you know in between
Right.
that time, which does happen.
Yeah.
So we kind of try and walk this line, but you would hear that. And okay, something like that, that's just a you misunderstood what it meant. Like
Right.
that's not the agency is so super terrible
Right.
because, you know, or the, and they would also say the agency didn't pay me when funds were being sent from escrow. Like
Ugh.
sometimes like that, it's just education, right?
Yeah. Right.
But other times it's like, no, that actually needs to be, you know, handled and addressed.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
Agreed.
you
That's
know,
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Oh man.
It's amazing I'd be interested to know all your committee. I'm not asking you to name them, but like it's cool that you guys have a bunch of different committees to help different situations and like there's strictly for that. It's not like, oh hey, we're an umbrella. Yes, you're an umbrella in a sense, but you have little groups that help each scenario, which is in this industry amazing
Very neat.
because there's so many different scenarios.
yeah. So we have like a legal committee and a mental health committee and a marketing committee and a mentorship committee and an education committee. Like there's a lot. So yeah, I think there's actually, if you want to see, there's a list of all the committees on the website. So you can always go and look. The grievance committee, there's one. Standards committee. I will never remember them all.
Oh, you're good.
How many members are there in seats? Did we talk about that? Was it
I said there's like 200
was it 200
agencies, I think, but
agencies?
all of the
Okay.
members, I think it's
Is it
300 and something.
okay? Oh, wow.
Ish.
Okay. Yeah.
How many volunteers do you know?
A lot.
A
Yeah.
lot. That's fair.
I mean,
bet.
yeah.
Jeez.
That's
I mean,
fair.
just so there's the president, right? And then there's what, five or six people on the board.
Oh, God.
Then we have I think there's like 5 officers. That's not even getting into the committees.
Right.
So every
Right.
committee has several people. So a lot, but it's I mean, it's a lot of work to do all of this. So
I was gonna say
and
that.
it's
Yeah.
all volunteer
And
for
then
free.
you've got an agency and you're working on the
Right.
Uganda stuff. I'm thinking, wow, does this woman sleep? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I had 6 of my own children.
Oh my God.
And then
Then
you did, wait, how many?
But,
2 surrogacy?
2 surrogacies. So, well, one child is stepson. So I had 5 of my own, right? And I have a stepson. So 6 that I raised at home. And then I did 2 surrogacies, a set of twins and a single. But I'm down to only like 1 kid at home now. So like my oldest kids are turning like, they just turned 29. So it kind of like trickles down from there, but I only have 1 left at home.
Okay.
So,
Look
you
at
know,
you.
I'm used to being busy.
Yeah. So now in this day and age, you having 5, if we were to go back and you were to be a surrogate, now you having 5 on your own, they would only let you, most clinics would only let you do 1, right? Because that would be 6 total pregnancies.
Right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a rule back then.
No, I
So
know it wasn't.
It's been a long time.
It was age back
surrogate-
then.
Yeah, my surrogate kids are like teenagers now. So
Yeah. It was
you
an
know,
age
it's
back then. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
funny.
So
Yeah.
it's a little different, but you know,
Yeah.
like I said, standards and guidelines
Yeah.
change.
They all changed. Yeah.
But yeah,
What is the website that people go to?
It's seedsethics.org.
So
So
seed
with an
ethics or with an E?
seeds with an S,
Okay.
ethics.org.
Okay.
Awesome.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
very knowledge, a wealth of information out there. But then I kept going, I kept clicking like, okay, member. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a member. So hold on, let me go look at this.
I know.
I
And
want-
for my agency, when you look me up in the directory, it's like I've had people like, I can't find you. So because it goes GS space moms. So that's anyway, if you can't find me, that's why. They just put a
okay,
space in there and then it like throws off the search function. So
gotcha.
I'm in there, I promise.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. I feel like we cover a lot, and I really,
Yeah,
really, really appreciate this. And I personally, after this, want to go look up all the standards. Like, and I know there's probably like a lot of them, but like I'll read a little
It
bit
is.
by day.
Yeah, and they have guidelines. So there's a lot of information and it's long. It's like a lot of pages. So
okay.
Great though.
Okay, it's
so
helpful. Yeah. It's
it'll
because we're just
be
trying to get
nighttime
information out
reading
there.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything I do is just interview like this and just get information out and just share what we can share. But to go and look at all those and just maybe pull out a few and just go, wow, I didn't know that. And then on a podcast, we could talk about some of that interesting stuff too, because there's a lot. I know there's a lot out
There
there.
is a lot. And one of the things too that we do at Seeds that people who aren't members or haven't been in this space for very long sometimes have a harder time with is, okay, ethics are not clear cut. That's just the nature of ethics. And so sometimes we'll have not debates really, but more like sharing the different views of an issue, right? Because you can look at it different ways. And so there are people that, you know, will have certain views on certain things and, you know, it can get not heated, like we're all friends, but you know, people, it's a group of very passionate people. So, you know, there are things in the standards where not everybody was, you know,
100%.
hardly in agreement. But overall we decided, okay, like that's the best practice for now.
Right. Which is great to even have that, because way back when, no, I don't think it existed. I think just each agency.
It didn't way back when.
Yeah. And just so different. I mean, just 2 decades, honestly, that's a little amount of time, but so much change.
It is a fast moving field.
It is.
It just is. And so, and people I don't think quite realize it, but think about just insurance, just that alone. Like it used to be back in the day that you could get insurance whenever you wanted to, like, so you would match and you would get insurance. Like it was fairly easy. Now we have like open enrollment, and then liens didn't used to exist, and or it used to only be a Kaiser thing. Like there's things are changing all the time, which is why standards, you know, have to be, I don't want to say flexible, but do you know what I mean? Like they're not set in stone. They will need to be adjusted at different points in time as things change. They just will. And as, you know, as this field grows and as awareness grows and as different things come up, you know, it will be addressed, and we're always kind of, you know, where do we go next? What, you know, what's the direction that we need to look? So that's what Seeds is doing.
I'm so thankful that Seeds is there. I mean, we didn't
Me
have
too.
it. My daughter, she does surrogacy. It's so nice. Like, and all of you, applaud you for doing this on your own time. Like, that does say something about how passionate you all are about your industry and about your craft. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's true. Almost all the professionals are really passionate about what we do. So, and it can be really stressful. So be nice to them. Like,
oh, of course. My gosh.
Oh my gosh, poor thing. Can become overwhelming, I'm sure, at times, especially when you're in a field that you're extremely passionate about and you just want the best for it. And then at times it's, you know, everything is just becoming overwhelming.
well, and we kind of carry a lot of like other people's issues are on ourselves, right? So for example, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it wasn't about us, right? It was about how is this going to impact everyone else? And like on that day, we Seeds actually held a webinar just for professionals again, because we needed people to talk to that understood where we were coming from, because it's different than how a lot of other people were processing it. because, you know, but then we could also kind of band together to help support people in states where there was now going to be an issue, and, you know, kind of pulling those things together.
Yeah.
And as professionals, we also like did a silent auction at one of our conferences and gave money to Resolve, which helps work on the legislative end of
Yeah.
of those types of, you know, fertility and reproductive issues. And
Right.
so, yeah, we really try to work together to support a lot of, you know, a lot of people everywhere.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You're
Everything that
making me
you
tired
do.
just talking about all you're doing. I think it's phenomenal. It really is. I feel worthless because I'm not helping more. Like honestly, I'm like, wait, hold on.
And wait, there's more.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on. This was very, very enlightening. Seriously, because I looked at the website and I got what I could, and I was like, we're just gonna need to talk to her because I'm just a little confused on what this is.
Yeah.
But
There's a
wow.
lot of other people to talk to too. I mean,
Yeah,
you want
yeah,
to have an attorney come on and have them, you know, talk. We have people. I just volunteered
gosh.
because, you know, as the education
And
person,
yeah,
I'm like, sure,
Perfect.
and I can talk about all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
yes, super
No,
helpful.
we truly appreciate it, and I
We
know
do.
everyone else will too. And just thank you for your time. We know that you've spread yourself thin, so we appreciate this
Yes,
hour.
yes, and all your knowledge. Gosh,
yeah, no
very. Oh
problem.
my gosh.
Always happy to help. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, no
Thank you so
problem.
much. It was
You're
very
welcome.
lovely speaking with you.
Yes, very
Thanks
nice.
for inviting me.
Oh my gosh.
Of
Thank you for
course.
enjoying. Thank you for coming on. Have a
No
good
problem.
one.
You
Thank
too.
you. Have a good
Bye,
evening.
Lisa.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I feel smarter, but I also feel useless.
That's exactly what I said. I feel worthless. Like, why am I not helping more? Why
Why?
can't I get some free time? What, huh? What can
I
I
would
do?
love to give some free time. I would love to help more. I don't even know what that means, but like she's helping Uganda, and I know that like that's not. I mean,
Okay.
seed ethic. I mean, she's part of it, but like just everything
She's
that's
doing that on her
there,
own, I think. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
everybody, and everybody's volunteered. Like they're all giving their.
That's what blew me away. That just blew me away.
Yeah.
That they are all volunteering their time, which just goes to show you the ethics and morals they have as individuals to want to devote some of their time, a lot of their time, to these types of issues, and to try and get best practices and try to get standards and have conferences and let people come and do webinars. Like she said, Roe v. Wade, they jumped onto a webinar because that does affect surrogacy a little differently when you're
Totally.
possibly aborting a surrogate pregnancy. Completely different than what Roe v. Wade was talking about. Oh yeah, yeah. What? Oh my gosh, amazing. My head's just reeling. But she's very well spoken. Just
Very,
so
very
full of
informative.
information. Oh my
And now
gosh.
I have to go and I have to take like 2 weeks to read all these guidelines and standards.
Yeah, I'm gonna download them too. And yeah,
I'd like to know what matches up and what I haven't seen.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time, and thank you,
Yes.
Seed Ethics, for all that you do, because like
Oh my gosh. Unsung heroes, man. Oh man.
oh my gosh. If anybody out there has any questions or would like to share their story, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Stop.Sit.Surrogate. And this has been another episode of Stop Sit Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen.
Bye everyone.
Bye.